If you've ever played the OG Little Nightmares or its spiritual ilk, pants-soiling platformers like Limbo and Inside, then yeah, you already know how rough this sequel's gonna get. The diminutive heroes of these games are short, but your life expectancy as them is gonna be shorter. Because everything is out to eat your eyes for jujubes, scary things, safe-looking things, seemingly inanimate objects. Make no mistake, in Little Nightmares 2, death will come at you quicker than a subway flasher after No Nut November. With this follow-up, you'll once again be paying for a seat, but will only be needing the edge of it. The Swedish-based Tarsier Studios had their eye in for creepy creatures and surreal environments with the first game in 2017, but is this sequel an evolution of that horror? More importantly, is it a bigger Little Nightmare? The first game felt like it was over in a few heartbeats. Panicked ones. Does number 2 stretch out the scares? I'm going to take an ill-advised leap into all that in a second. But first, my usual bit of housekeeping for my videos. I should point out that I deal in two things: time-stamped topics that can be quickly accessed in the YouTube playbar, and also sections labelled Gameplay Chunk. These are like 2 minutes or so parts where I just shut my yap and let the game speak for itself, typically in an early moment of the proceedings so as to minimise spoilers for you. And to prove I'm not talking crap, here's a bit of that now. Veterans of Little Nightmares will know that this series deals in a less is more approach to narrative. The plot's about as threadbare as the rags worn by your hero. Everything is odd. Everything is open to interpretation. Don't even expect diary-like collectibles that put things into sharper focus for those of you with a mind for lore. If you want a window opened as to why this world is like a bad acid trip after watching Pink Floyd's The Wall, then you're really going to need to look into the companion comics or trawl through an online wiki. Dovetailing with the Bad Dream theme, the landscapes you're going to traverse and the denizens you meet in Little Nightmares 2 are impossible things, loosely sewn together into one big, long, ball-busting tribulation. That said, this is the sort of misadventure that's so dark and so brutal that, despite its oppressiveness and wall-to-wall bollocking, it's good book levels of captivating. I couldn't put my controller down, even when I was bashing my brains against a puzzle. Or somebody else's. The most sizable little switch up this time around is you're a different kid. An adorable Oliver Twist named Mono, who, surprisingly, isn't charting a course through his hardships alone. 6, the mute, literal poster child from the first game, shows up as a non-controllable first mate, and these two urchins share some genuinely tender moments. Some of those are scripted, others can be of your own making if you use the hand-holding function, which is this lovely little spiritual wink to the Aiko and Yorda relationship. When it comes to the twin hero dynamic, more often than not you are partnered up, though sometimes the environment or enemies will divide you into single-cell survivors. I think Tarsia does a respectable job in making you care for your buddy. There's also great work done with the breadcrumbing of an enemy on the horizon, a mysterious big bad who's using evil frequencies to warp reality and also, possibly, trying to awaken something in Mono. For me though, the most interesting hook was getting to shine a light on Six as an AI. Obviously, in the previous adventures, our actions mostly determined who she was, but there were scripted moments where it was obvious that the darkness of her predicaments was shaping her for the worst. She's been painted in the past as this sort of self-concerned survivor, first and foremost. I mean, yeah, she has shown willingness to help other kids, but that's been largely transactional. She has a very grey, reciprocal moral code. That being the case, can she really be counted on? When you need her most, is she going to leave you hanging? That Jagged Alliance dynamic, plus this ever-changing cornucopia of scary crap trying to kill you, is what makes these continuing little nightmares a big addiction. Basically, I enjoyed this from start to finish. It's juice worth the squeeze. And most of that is down to some new gameplay wrinkles, which we're going to slide into in a few minutes. So what's it like to get mitts on with Mono? Like the first title, in essence what you're doing here is this perpetual push ever rightward. Your goal is a constant attempt to escape a hell that's been neatly broken up into 5 themed chapters. Each of these is ruled by a particularly large Chungus, who's initially observed from afar, avoided for a bit, and then there's a sort of boss phase where you have to get your Hansel and Gretel on. Fail to outpace or outsmart them, and you're going to get gobbled up quicker than some little bits. Physics-based platforming and puzzling are the order of the day, and you should know that there's been a deliberate design choice to make you control somewhat ineffectually. I wouldn't say it's shopping trolley bad controls, slightly waterlogged is probably the best description. This tiny loss of agency ties into the whole nightmare angle, but if you're smart and observant, you can leverage what are pretty simple controls to do remarkably clever things, and therein lies the endorphins. Standard actions like crouch sneaking, leaping, and sprinting all return. You can also expect a lot of grabbing onto objects to either drag, push, lever pull, or just yeet things at other things. Mono is also given limited time access to a few item upgrades. Having a better light source than Six's cigarette lighter is greatly appreciated, for a time. And that's especially true when piercing that Stygian gloom can be used like a weapon to freeze these baddies who are trying to play a lethal game of peekaboo with you. I can say that Mono does evolve later on with some more cool items and skills, both of which make for some of the most creative and satisfying puzzling in the game. But you know what, I'm going to leave you to discover those for yourself. One non-spoilery thing that I can reveal is that combat has a larger role in this sequel, but it's kind of a mixed bag. Firstly, the good stuff. When combat works, being able to 2x4 smaller enemies just feels great. It's a rare shred of power in this bleak world.
Here's Johnny!
However, Tarsier never oversteps the mark by making you feel strong for long. In fact, when a weapon shows up, sometimes it could just be the dev deliberately trying to make you feel overconfident, to give you just enough rope to hang yourself with. Lastly, the waterloggy approach to platforming mechanics persists here as well, so you had better toll-chock that bastard on the first go, because there's not often time for a second attempt. Thump dispensing aside, Nightmares 2 still leans more heavily towards brain stumping and jumpy jumping, so relinquish any fears you may have of this sort of turning into a side-scrolling beat-em-up, because that's just not the case. While I overwhelmingly enjoyed Little Nightmares 2, it's not a shoo-in for the prize of flawless sequel. I reckon the perfect timing nature of the combat will be a touch unbearable for the more casual or less patient among you. Enemies become quite adept at faking you out, and will one-shot murder you if you don't absolutely nail a split-second attack. That's gonna grate on you, especially when you're asked to adjust the attitudes of multiple enemies in a row before the checkpoint will trigger. I also experienced a fatal crash bug that just wouldn't go away until, after like 30 minutes, I realized it was occurring due to me wearing one of the collectible hats. Later on, I lost more time to a physics bug that left me head scratching for just no reason. Basically, the key item needed for a puzzle had been ricocheted out of sight and the interactive part of the level I was in, because I belted the creature that was holding it a little bit too hard. That caused a good 20 minutes of me looking for something that I didn't even know I should be looking for and couldn't pick up anyway. And that was followed by a surrender, a checkpoint reload, and then extreme irritation when I'd realized what had happened. Hopefully that's going to be patched out of existence so you don't have to go through it yourself. Lastly, there's the question of runtime, a sticking point that I had with the first game, which could be completed in like an hour and a bit. Little Nightmares 2 can be clocked in about 3.5 to 4 hours. Completionists will most likely extend that a little bit by using the jump to chapter function to quickly sniff out 8 collectible hats and 18 glitched remains. But yeah, I don't know, call me greedy, but I still think there should be more meat on these bones. All that being said, I loved this ride from start to finish. Loved it to bits, you could say. As Tarsier Studios continues to perfect its craft, it's obvious that they're students of the greatest platforming franchises in gaming. They've also got a ton of great ideas themselves, and an art team who know how to get under your skin and haunt your nightmares. We're in the dead zone of 2021 releases, and this might be a small blip on your radar. But trust me, don't underestimate it. Taking a chance on this little nightmare will reward you with big, pants-soiling surprises.